Okay, we're going to get started tonight. I am at a different location because I have been at a singles event for the weekend. So, but I do have Wi-Fi, so I'm excited about that. So that'll be good. Okay, so for today, we are going to be talking about a few things tonight. So in the last few weeks, months, whatever, I've talked to you guys about like 5 things that are important that we need to agree on, discuss, whatever, before you before you marry somebody, but even, those are things you discuss as you date somebody, right? So, so what I thought we would do tonight is kind of focus more on being the right one and discuss those 5 topics throughout the next month. We're going to take one at a time. And tonight I thought we would discuss religion. It can be a controversial subject, so even within the church. So I don't want to have any debating or arguing or whatever going on, as usual. We may differ in our opinions, and that's totally fine. We'll just discuss those. But we definitely want to and different things I've said before. If you're new to us, we don't do any bashing of leaders or exes, or we just want to kind of keep conversation going. You are welcome to share your feelings and thoughts and opinions, and that's fine. And even some experiences that may relate, that may also be helpful. That would be awesome. Okay. So for tonight, we're going to be talking about the religious aspect. For many of us, being members of the church, that is something that is important to us. Religion is important to most people. That it gives us our core beliefs and values. Christianity was something that a lot of our rules and regulations in the country that we live in were founded on. And I know they've been changed, updated, and whatever through the years, but I do know that that the religion does play a part in a lot of strong marriages, and religion can be something that can actually put a wedge in a marriage if it's something that you don't agree on. And it's more than just being a member of the church. There are different aspects to our religion that I believe that is important to discuss and to talk about. For instance, is the person that you are dating, are they comfortable praying? Are they comfortable praying together? Do you want to establish a habit of you guys praying together or studying scriptures together or whatever? So that is important to think about and to just kind of to go into. So as we talk about this tonight, I do want there, like I said earlier, just be some open discussion, and I don't really want to talk about the topics per se, but just talk about topics. Like we don't need to discuss the different aspects of it. Like we don't need to talk about the importance of prayer, right? We don't need to talk about different aspects of the religion, but just more about what might be important to you and how we could bring it up in conversation and how we can talk to people and that type of thing. And I know there's some background noise here, but they're finishing up the game. Sorry about that. At this point, what I want to do is I have actually been studying recently. Let me grab my phone. Some different aspects of spiritual suggestions is what they're calling it in prepping for yourself. Brian Kellogg is going to join me here because he's at the singles event with me. Say hi to Brian. Hi. So, and we may even have a couple others join us in a minute. But anyway, so there's a couple of things that I have found in my study that are just spiritual suggestions, things that are important for us to focus on to be the right one. And number one thing is to draw close to God. I believe that our relationship with the Lord is always needing to be first and foremost, because if we have a relationship with the Lord, it'll be easier for us to have a better relationship with the person that we're with, that we're dating, that we're married to, or whatever. And I think our marriages will be a lot stronger if we both have first that relationship with the Lord. So drawing close to the Lord, and then filling your heart with love for others instead of judging or critiquing or thinking, that they need to do things differently or whatever. And then striving to walk the path of discipleship. Share what's in your heart. Be open about it. Be open about your thoughts and your feelings and, what is important to you. Some people tend to hold back things that are important to them and things that are in their heart. And early on, that's important to do because you don't want to be that vulnerable with somebody that you barely know, right? But as you get to know each other, you do want to be more open and open. So, and then we want to trust the Lord and trust the Lord to work his miracles. Some people do say it'll take a miracle for me to get married again or for me to find somebody or whatever, right? Trust the Lord in his miracles. So I'm going to go through these 5 again. And while you guys are talking in the chat, I'll type them out so you can get them. But number 1 is draw close to the Lord. Number 2 is fill your heart with love for others. Number 3 is strive to walk the path of discipleship. Share what's in your heart. Number 4. And then number 5 is trust the Lord to work his miracles. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, all these are kind of interconnected. Because as you draw closer to Heavenly Father, he will give you guidance and fill your heart with love for other people so that you can help others, walk that path of discipleship and ultimately find somebody who shares those same characteristics and beliefs.
Right. Awesome. Anyone else have thoughts on that? And what would that mean to you? What would that look like?
I know for me, like, as we, as we find out what we're looking for and align that with Heavenly Father's will, he's going to put the right people in our path. And, you think we attract what we are, if you are a person who is really fun-loving and you're always like, the class comedian, you're going to attract other people who are funny, If you are somebody who's spiritual and has your heart in the right place, you're going to attract tods that sneak up behind you. You're going to attract people who love the Lord and put him first. And, as you do these things, like as you're following the path of discipleship, that means you're going to be serving others. You're going to be sharing what you've learned with others. You're going to be, mourning with those that mourn, comforting those that stand in need of comfort, that kind of thing. And that helps your heart too. That fills your heart with love for others, because as you serve other people, then you'll love them. And as we grow that Christ-like love for everybody, that really opens our heart to the opportunity to find that romantic love that we're looking for with a special person.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I did get those 5 typed out. I guess Todd's not coming back. I don't know. We may have another one of our single adults joining us tonight. We'll see. All right. So this is just so important. But as we go throughout tonight, I do want to talk about what it is that you feel like this means to you. Okay, so I typed it out in the chat. Just kind of think about it a little bit, and then then we'll chat about it as we go throughout tonight. So let's talk about a little bit about spiritual prep, or preparation, and even drawing closer to the Lord. What does that mean? Now, we can always do our typical Sunday school answers of praying and reading our scriptures and going to church, right? And we can say that in kind of a boring way, just like I just did. But how incredibly important those things are is just amazing. To be able to, if we didn't talk to each other, we wouldn't have much of a relationship, right? And if you're going to be dating or married to somebody, you want to talk to them every day, right? Well, it's the same way with the Lord. You've got to be able to talk to him every day. Have a conversation with him. Pray to him. He is God. He is all-knowing. He is like beyond any comprehension that we have. And he has the ability to work those miracles and to bless us in ways that we need, or help us through challenges that we're having or whatever. But definitely prayer is just so incredibly important. And for me, it could be how you pray and when you pray. That's completely up to you. I know that there are some suggested ways of praying, like praying on our knees and praying morning and evening, and praying over our food, and praying with our families, praying as a couple, praying individually. Those are all very important things. When we had a couple of the married couples on a few weeks ago, a couple of them did mention that early on in their dating, especially when they got exclusive, they prayed together morning and night. Even when they were long distance, they would do it either over the phone or through video or whatever.
Especially long distance,
right?
Because that really strengthens that.
Right.
When you don't get to see somebody every day, having that kind of link with your Heavenly Father between the two of you really strengthens that.
Right. I'm sure that's something you would look forward to, every day, being able to connect that way. And that would create a bond that would be highly important as well. And then studying scriptures, or studying Come Follow Me, or studying however that you can, whatever you feel like. I mean, reading the Saints book together or whatever. Those are just really important, very critical things in being able to bring in religion to our lives. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I know for me, prayer is really the key to everything, because that is our communication tool. I mean, the Lord can speak to us through reading scriptures and things like that, but prayer is really how we communicate. And if you think about the kind of relationship that you want with Heavenly Father, think about, as parents, think about this with your kids, or if you don't have kids yet, think about when you were a kid and your parents. If you just go to your parent when you want something, what kind of relationship is that? Think about people that that the only time you hear from them is when they need something from you. It's not a good feeling. It's not a good relationship. But, if you're going to your parents, or your kids are coming to you with problems and saying, hey, I need help with this, and I'm trying to solve it, I'm trying to figure it out, and they come to you with, hey, guess what, this happened, and they just, when you have that open communication, it just makes that relationship so much better. I mean, it's just the same way with any of our relationships. The more we communicate and the more open we are, the better the relationship. So that when we do really need something in our lives, when we're praying earnestly for a blessing, it's that much more meaningful. Because the Lord loves us and he wants to bless us, but he's also not a genie that waits around to grant our wishes. He wants to have a real relationship, like a parent.
I would also offer that I don't know if any of you checked out on the front page of the church website for Yesterday Today, there was an article about, paraphrasing, something along the lines of, it's not about where I've been, but where I'm going. I don't know if anybody saw that article.
Yeah.
And one of the main takeaways from that for me was that my self-worth doesn't come from anyone else. My self-worth comes from Father. And if you're praying together, and if you're studying your scriptures together, that takes a lot of pressure off, because you're not depending on whether or not what that person thinks of you. You're just communing with the Spirit and indicating that you're fine with who you are because you know that Heavenly Father accepts you. And it really takes a lot of pressure off.
Right.
So I thought that was extremely valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. We'll have to look that up. Sounds like something I need to read. I appreciate you sharing that. Anyone else have any other thoughts? All right. When you think about just the simple act of going to church and taking the sacrament, that's something else that during the week we're living our religion. It's not just a thing that we just show up on Sunday and eat a piece of bread and drink a little bit of water, right? Like we are living our religion in order to be able to prepare ourselves for the most sacred time that we commune with God. And that we do participate in that sacred ordinance of being able to take the bread and water and take the sacrament, and being able and knowing how the other person feels about that is critical, because are you two on the same wavelength with that? Are you two do you think alike with that? That's going to be very important. How important is the sacrament to you? There are some people that thinks, going to church once or twice a month is great. It's awesome. It's no big deal, right? There are others that think we've got to be there every week. So you want to make sure that either way that you're on the same page. Whatever your beliefs are about that, whatever your thoughts or feelings are, you just want to make sure that you are on the same wavelength with that, right? When it comes to temple attendance, again, same thing. For some people, having a temple recommend may or may not be a big deal. For others, it is. And then how often they go to the temple may or may not be a big deal to some, and it is to others. So again, you just want to make sure that you're on the same wavelength. And then what is important to you? Like when I asked you to make that list of what's important to you, if any of these are on your list, just make sure that you are doing it as well. Okay, so like for instance, if temple attendance is important to you, you want to get a little bit more specific in that, not that you're ordering up a bride or a groom, right? I'm not saying that. Like, you're gonna be like, I want one that goes every Thursday at 10 o'clock. We're not doing that, right? You're just going to be more like, want somebody that goes often enough, say maybe once a month or every quarter or twice a year, or whatever's important to you, right? And that you were doing the same thing. It is my opinion that we all need to be striving to be able to go to the temple and be able to participate in those ordinances. That is something that's a big part of our religion. And I feel like that's an important way also of drawing closer to the Lord, and in bringing that peace in our lives and welcoming those miracles in our lives and bringing blessings. That some of those blessings can only be given to us through going to the temple. But, how often someone goes and how often you participate in that, it's completely up to you. You also want to be as in tune with the Lord and with the Spirit as you can, and recognize how that feels to you. We had a discussion earlier today. There are some people that feel the Spirit in different ways. Some people may get butterflies in their stomach. Some people, it's just a thought that comes to their head. Some people may feel a burning in their heart. Different people feel it in different ways. So be able to know what that is to you, and how do you recognize the Spirit? For you to be in tune with the Lord, to be able to do that.
Yeah, and sometimes, one person can feel it in different ways at different times.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because I know for me, it comes in different ways at different times.
Mm-hmm. Right. Any other thoughts on these so far? All right. If you do, just unmute and share your thoughts. And now, some of these were actually given to us today during a sacrament meeting, because while we were here at the single adult event, I just started because I knew that this was the topic for tonight, and it's so cool to me how the Lord works. Knowing this topic, and I don't remember if it was a brother or sister talking about these, but anyway, they gave this, maybe it was a brother.
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
He was talking
Yeah,
about
and so he gave this list, and so I pulled out my little notes and I start typing away, right? I don't think I got them all 10. I missed a few. So if any of you that were there remember the others, let me know. But anyway, that was one of them. He also talked about the law of chastity, and we'll get to the intimacy section, in a few weeks. But the law of chastity, again, it's where are you at with that, and making sure you're on the same terms. Now, if you guys are going by the standards of the church, then that is pretty black and white in some ways. In other ways, there could be some gray areas for some people. Just something to think about. All right, and then another one is the word wisdom. So today, in studying, we did a big Come Follow Me study group today. And if you guys studied, if you guys were able to look at it, and if not, you can look at it later. The Come Follow Me study questions and whatever for the week, for last week, the one that ended today. So one of them was talking. It ended with how there were certain people that throughout the lesson it was about how we need to just accept people and love them and not be trying to tell them what they should or shouldn't do, kind of thing. And anyway, so one of them is. Towards the end of that, it was talking about how there was one aspect or one group of people in the Bible that were creating, some controversy, if you will, like they were debating whether, which was good and as far as the religion goes and that kind of thing. So anyway, so I just brought up the topic of the word of wisdom because the word of wisdom can be controversial. Not that, we want to debate it or anything. I'm just saying that for some people it can, because it is one thing where, different aspects of the word of wisdom people interpret differently. So you want to make sure that with our code of health that you're on the same page or very similar, and that you agree in how you live it, or that you accept each other. For some reason, for some people, caffeinated sodas are an issue, and for others it's not. So either way, you just want to make sure that, you're on the same wavelength with whatever.
And you don't necessarily have to agree on everything. You just have to figure out what your compromises are. Yes. And what is okay for one person and okay for another. Because if you have some person, one of the couple that drinks caffeine and the other doesn't, mm-hmm. if they're okay with that, it's not a big deal.
Yep. Yep. Hey, welcome, Todd. Todd's also joining us now.
Hi.
All right. So for those of you that just come in, we're at a singles event, kind of the end of the singles event. This is the last day. A lot of people have already gone home, but we're staying another night. Yes, I am. And then we're going home in the morning. So if you're hearing background noise, it's just some of the other people around. So anyway, we are talking about the topic of religion and being the right one. And in the past, I've talked about the 5 things that are important for us to agree on. So today, we're just more bringing up the topic of religion. And we're going to talk about different things that we may want to think about or talk about. And after we go through this list a little bit, we want to talk about more about how to bring up this subject with somebody. How do we go about talking to somebody? How do we have conversations with people? And some of it will be a little bit at a time and that kind of thing, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The brother that gave the talk today actually suggested that we listen to the song Humble and Kind by Tim McGraw, one of my favorite songs. Yeah, I know, right? He said to make sure that you do stay humble and kind, that we are, we do want to be submissive to the Lord. We do want to be teachable, right? We want to make sure that the Lord can still touch our heart and to be kind to other people, because we don't know where they're at in their journey. And we're not better than they are. They're just on a different path and a different spot in their journey, and going through different things. But he was a Navy guy, and he was taught something while doing training. And one of the phrases that he was taught well was train like you're going to fight, and then fight like you're training. So he more put that to our life in that train like you're going to live, and then live like you're training. Basically, I got from that, live your religion. What did you get from that? Did you get about
Yeah, I mean, on Sunday at church, we learn, here's what we're supposed to do. It's about living that. And it's about making those choices beforehand, before you get put in situations. Like, talking about the word of wisdom, if you make the choice, I'm never going to drink, then when you're offered a drink, it's a lot easier to just say, no thanks, I don't drink. Things like that, where if you figure out who you are and where you stand in the gospel, then it's easier to make those choices, when they come up, or before they come up.
I guess, and also remember, people are watching you. People know you. And there's nothing worse than when somebody comes up to you and says, aren't you're not supposed to be doing that, are you? If you're doing it. Not saying that you would, but just remember who you are.
And that was actually what I think maybe the sister was bringing it today.
Remember who you are.
Yeah. So
might even be helpful to just review for the Strength of Youth pamphlet. Maybe we just need a refresher, because some of the things that we're talking about are presented to the kids in the early developing phases of their lives, and it's not just for them, it's for throughout, especially in the circumstances that we are in.
Definitely. Jennifer, did you have something you wanted to add?
Actually, I try to live by the mantra, don't give up what you want most for what you want right now.
Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome. And some people have taken that to mean something different throughout their lives. So generally that phrase is more about your religion versus a candy bar, right? It's more about don't give up your beliefs, your standards, for something that may be tempting you to break those standards, right? So so that's awesome. Thank you, guys. All right, so let's open this up a little bit. Tonight we're talking about religion. How do we bring that up to talk to people about it? What ways? What do we say? How do we ask? Yeah, you can definitely say something.
You know what really works well? People, especially if you catch them by surprise, if you say to, and this works for me all the time, if you have a friend that you want to bring to church, you just walk up to them one day on a Saturday and you say, hey, what are you doing on Sunday? And you know already what they're going to say. Nothing. Because most people like to just hang around the house. They don't really have a whole lot of plans. They like to sleep in on Sunday. And if you said to them, it would really mean a lot to me if you'd come to church with me on Sunday. Now, I've said that to people. And did we lose everybody?
No, it's
Hold on. I don't know what happened there, guys.
Oh, we can click there.
We can still hear you guys, though. You can
there you go.
So
Our screen went white, sorry.
So when you say, hey, it would mean a lot for me if you would come to church with me on Sunday, or if you can't come this Sunday, maybe you can come a different Sunday. I'll come pick you up. You got to tell them that I'll come and pick you up, because then they can't get out of it.
Well, we're also talking about, though, like in relationships, like in dating relationships, how we're going to bring up religion.
And so it's just, you don't have to bring up anything to do with the religion. You just have to say, hey, it means a lot to me if you'd come with me to church on Sunday. Now, I don't know about you, but I would even if I didn't want to go to church, if my friend said that to me, it would mean a lot to me if you'd come with me, I would go.
There you go.
And
Okay.
I have never had anybody say no.
Okay, so when we bring up this topic, say in dating, thanks for sharing that, by the way. When we bring up this topic in dating, there are, you'll know whether or not they're members of the church, or hopefully you'll know that beforehand, right? First of all, you'll create a standard for yourself. Do you want to date somebody that's a member of the church or not? And you want to make sure that whatever standard you create, that you are good with it, that you've taken that as a matter of prayer, and that's you and the Lord, right? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I mean, I can give you my opinion, or I can give you my experience of what I'm doing, but I don't receive inspiration and revelation for you, right? So you do what's best for you. And as far as dating, let's just take for granted that we're dating a member of the church, okay, for the rest of this conversation, so that we can know when we're talking religion, how are we going to bring it up? And then if you guys want to talk about dating non-members and how to bring that up, we can definitely do that after. Sound good? Or if you want to fit that in, we can do that too. Okay, so how to bring up the religion. Are we just going to go to dinner one night and just go, okay, let's talk about the church? Maybe. More likely not. More likely it's going to be woven into different conversations, right? Like maybe you'll start talking about going to church on Sunday. What ward are you in? Do you have a calling? Right? That seem familiar to you?
That's the biggest one for me. It's like, I'll ask, so what's your calling?
Yeah.
And if they have a calling, you can talk about it. They're at least going to church and striving to do that calling. And if they're like, what's a calling? Then that's kind of a warning sign.
You're kind of like,
So things like that. Yeah, I find it's, like you said, interwoven into multiple conversations.
We had an experience this weekend because we were doing a Come Follow Me study group this afternoon. And yesterday we were out at the lake and talking to different people and, finding out who was staying and who was going home after church or whatever. And there was somebody that asked a friend of theirs saying, hey, are you going to join us for the Come Follow Me study group? And he's like, what's Come Follow Me? And he's like, isn't that just a song? So we actually had to explain to him what the Come Follow Me program was, which was cool because we were then able to share that with him and him, learn a little bit about, I don't know if he was a convert. I don't know, anything about the man. I just know that he was asking. And so I just thought that was just really cool that we were able to share with him what that was, right? That was not in a dating situation. That was in a group setting. So so that was cool that we were able to just kind of befriend him and just share that with him. But sometimes people, even though, and this was something brought up today at our Come Follow Me study group, is while we might be a certain age, if we have people who are converts, they may, 2 years old, we can consider them age 2 in the gospel. Well, we know that a 2-year-old doesn't know a lot and still needs to be taught, right? So a lot of times we need to still treat people that in a way of just being kind to them and just, sharing with them what we know and what we do. In a dating situation, I think we need to do something similar. In that, while you may have what's important to you, like a calling or whatever, but if somebody says, what's a calling? You can then, share with them what that is and whatever. Now, whether or not you want to continue that relationship, that's completely up to you and will depend on what your standards are and what's important to you. But just so you know, it is something. Sometimes we're in somebody's life just to learn something from them, right? Because every relationship we have, I believe, is important, and every relationship is something that we can all learn from. I've learned something from the men that I've dated in different ways, and it's pretty awesome being able to do that. And so I think that if we look at it that way versus, oh no, it didn't work out, It's what are you learning from them? Why are they in your life? Because everybody's in your life for a reason. My belief.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, of all the people that I've dated, I've always been able to find, and it may not be until like a year after that or something, there was some reason for that. Whether I learned something from them, they learned something from me, I helped them, or they helped me. Like, there's always a reason. And sometimes it can be, oh, here's what I'm not looking for. But usually there is a little better reason than that.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. So what are some other ways that we could ask somebody or bring up a conversation, bring up a topic of religion, again, without being confrontational, without feeling like you're asking 20 questions? We don't want to play that game, right? What are some other questions that you guys have found that's helpful, or other conversation starters about religion that you have found that's helpful? Anyone? Hey, Jason.
I just
Glad you're here.
I'm loving Fred's view, by the way. He's not there and he's not listening, but I don't know where Fred's at, but I'm going there right now because he looks like he's got a nice little setup, a nice little view. Religion is they say don't ever talk about two things. One is religion and the other is politics.
Uh-huh.
So it's interesting that our dating life can be so interwoven in half of that subject right there with religion. I have dated those who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I've dated those who are not members of the said church. And it is interesting because regardless of who I talk to or who I date, religion absolutely does come up, especially here in the Bible Belt. I was talking to one young lady who is of another faith, and she said she couldn't date me. I'm like, was that because she says, we have a different viewpoint on religion, and there's no way that we're able to function together as a couple, which is absolutely fine, because she knew that I wasn't going to change my beliefs for any person, and she wasn't going to do the same for me. And the other part I've learned, and this is just for me personally, when I'm discussing, actually this is better, the lack of discussing religion with somebody who's not of our faith, is that it's almost a disconnect, because it's 50% of my life is revolved around our faith, and you want to be able to share something, you want to share something important to you with that other person while you're dating, and it's really hard, especially if they're not interested or not receptive to it. And so it's like half the relationship is dead all at the very get-go. So I've found it very difficult to date people who aren't members of our faith, just because one of the things that I definitely want to relate to somebody on in regards to religion isn't there. I just haven't found a way to make that work. And the invitation's been given out to go to church, and vice versa. It just doesn't seem to function very well, because the other part of that is you have different goals. One of the goals I have is I want to serve couples mission, and you can't do that if only one of you is a member of the faith. As far as bringing up in a conversation with those who are members, I've seen a little bit here. Do you have a calling? I've heard what's your favorite calling. I try to make it as natural as possible, and just kind of as the conversation goes on, just my biggest question is how long have you been a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And usually that question alone will then kind of grow from there, and then you can talk about different aspects of their faith, their beliefs, and their practices, and how they feel about different things. So it's a great conversation piece. It's interesting to hear people's different answers and how they got there, because a lot of people, so I see a lot of people, you've had people who have been less active for many of the years. And so when that comes up, he says, well, what helped you to, or why did you want to come back? What was the motivation factor for that? You have people who grew up at LDS, what was it like where you're at? Because, we talk to people in different areas. What was it like for you being raised in the church, in your life? Or how long has your family been in the church? That's another great question I like to ask, because it then kind of gives you a little bit of history. So definitely open-ended questions. Ask them not necessarily a personal question like, do you have a testimony or can you share your testimony, but just kind of give a little history behind them. And that allows them to share what they feel comfortable with you. And you don't I feel you don't put them on the spot, and that you're trying to kind of interview them for a job. So.
Amen. I hate questions that make you feel like you're in a job interview. Oh my goodness. That's why I want to talk about that. But Jason, I love those questions of how long have you been a member of the church? I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a great way to say, well, are you a member? Whatever, right? You don't want to come across that way. But definitely, I love that question. That's awesome. So that's a great suggestion. That's a great way of learning. So then you do know how new or how old they are in the gospel. And that is amazing. That's awesome. Oh, love that suggestion, Jason. Thank you so much for those thoughts. All right.
Oh, I actually wanted to speak to something. I think it's Todd that's sitting next to you. Is that correct? Okay. He brought up that the vulnerability side of that. I mean, we talk about that. We have to be vulnerable. And I think that any question that we want to ask somebody, we have to be willing and vulnerable enough to answer it about ourselves. So if we have to monitor where we are, our comfort levels, before we go asking them, well, who's your bishop? Unless you're willing to share your bishop's name with them, you shouldn't be asking who their bishop is. You shouldn't feel like you're one-upping somebody. Y'all have got to stay at the same level. That vulnerability's got to be the same, because anytime there's an imbalance in a relationship, you're headed for disaster. And I just wanted to bring that point out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for bringing that up. That is very true. Yeah, I know, because I've mentioned before that I'll ask for a bishop's name. I'm happy to give up my bishop's name. Like, please, check me out.
My bishop's trying to get rid of me, so he'll probably tell him all kinds of nice things.
I know, right? You're like, hey, glowing resume there. That's awesome. Hey, Heidi, I see that you're unmuted. Did you have any thoughts you wanted to share?
I am. I didn't know I was unmuted. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, it's okay.
I had to switch because my computer went off, and so I had to use my phone. The only thing that I can add is through dating non-members, and so my experience has been when I've talked to them about my religion, surprisingly, especially when I get to the part about wearing garments because I dress a certain way, it has been surprisingly accepted. I was scared to mention that to them, and I thought I would be judged and be like, oh my gosh, you wear what for underwear, and so I thought that they would find it super weird and super like, and want to run from that. And both experiences of the ones that I got close enough to share that with were both very, hey, that's awesome. If that helps you stay close to the Lord and that makes you feel good and safe, or that's your standard, then by all means, that's awesome. So that's the only thing I can add, is that it's not as, people are not as judgmental about it, I think, as they used to be. So I thought that was very helpful and good.
I never thought about bringing that topic up.
Yeah.
That's something I take for granted, I guess. So yeah, thank you, Heidi. I appreciate you bringing that up. That's awesome. Now, how do you go bringing that up though without, and how soon do we bring that up when dating a non-member? Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
And they're not a member?
Yeah, but she's not a non-member. No. I don't know, but maybe we can think about that, right? No, that's definitely a different topic.
I actually want to share something about that. I talked to a guy about 5 years ago on LDS singles, I believe it was, that we met, and things like we hit it off pretty good in the beginning. But as I started setting my standards, through the process that we've kind of all talked about, I found out he wasn't a member, that he was very interested in the church, but he wasn't a member. And so I'm, very carefully setting up non-judgmental expectations on where my standards are. And he almost kind of made fun of me about that. It's like, I can't believe that you're going to behave that way, and you're a grown woman, you can do what you want to, it's your body, you can do, you know, whatever. And super unattractive, and immediately that was done. But we have over the years become really good friends, and because I set my standards, he's joined the church, he's preparing to go to the temple, and he's one of my best friends, all because I was very clear with my expectations. And he tells me all the time, Jennifer, if it wasn't for you, I would never be a member. As much as I love the gospel, I would have never joined the church. He now has those same standards that he laughed at me having. So we can make a difference even with people that we opt not to date, and we need to never forget that.
Awesome.
I want to tell a story. The last, and I'm not bragging, it's just a story. It's a true story. The last individual that I baptized about 7 years ago, he started to work for me, and he noticed something different, and I started to help him. I didn't realize at the time that he had a pretty checkered background. In fact, he had served about 16 and a half years in maximum security prison because of drugs, selling drugs, cocaine. And he was at my house a lot because he liked, I guess he said he felt different at my house, and he liked being there. So anyway, to make a long story short, he took the discussions from two different sets of missionaries, very, 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 because he made a bad decision when he was 18. He made a bad decision to buy 1 kilogram of cocaine, and it put him in prison for 16 years at 18. So he wasn't a bad guy. He was just made a horrible mistake. And so what he basically said was, you know, if I had known that, I probably wouldn't have wanted him in my house to begin with. But he joined the church. He's active in the church, and it changed his life. You would have never thought in a million years that he would be interested in hearing about the gospel. So you can never, you know, underestimate anyone.
Right. Another great example of our influence on other people. But again, going back to talking about in a dating relationship, I love how Jennifer brought up the example of that. How even though, and just like I was talking about earlier, you know, we're in people's lives for different reasons, right? And we can learn from everybody. And just like Jennifer, it sounds like you made a tremendous impact on that man. So that's awesome. I appreciate that. All right, Elizabeth, I see. Oh, never mind. You're not muted. I mean, now you're muted.
And I'll add to that. You know, kind of going back to, you know, each relationship having something come out of it. You know, that's a great example of that. Yeah. You know, and it's not just about, oh, you know, he maybe became a member of the church. He's one of her best friends, and so you know, we can have really good friendships come out of our dating relationships, and a lot of that has to do with our standards and the gospel. Right. You know. Yeah.
This guy I was telling you about lives in Chicago. Calls me every week because he says I'm his best friend that he's ever had, and it's great because you make a difference in people's lives.
Definitely, definitely. All right. So, so do you guys have any other suggestions on how to bring up different topics with religion? I love so far that the conversation and suggestions are awesome. One of my favorite, let me just tell you, one of my favorite questions, because when it comes to temple recommend, that's something that's important to me. I don't just ask, hey, do you have a temple recommend? Or hey, are you going to the temple on Saturday? I just usually say something like, how often do you go to the temple? And I don't just come out and just blurt it out, right? Like we usually have a conversation around something else in the church. And then that gets kind of worked into the conversation. So I don't just come out with a list of questions and go, okay, here's one and here's next and here's whatever, right? But in the course of us dating, and generally within the first month or two, I will ask that question while we're talking about religion in some ways. Even if it's, say, about someone's talk at General Conference, or if it's, we have a second Saturday event right now with single adults, and we do a temple session at 3 together, and then we do dinner, and then we go to a dance most months. And so that can easily be worked in to a member that I am dating. Just being able to talk about that, and just sharing thoughts about temple work or family history or whatever. And I learned this weekend, I'm just going to share with you just because I think it's so awesome. If you have your family search app, I just think it's awesome. Family tree app on your phone, and you're around other people logged in, you can click on, there's a way of doing it. We're going to be showing people at the conference when they come how to find relatives that are around you. So as long as everybody's in the app. So we did this today with our study group.
And we're all cousins.
I got a bunch of cousins. I didn't even realize this. So much fun. So anyway,
Paula, say the name of that app again.
it's just the family search app, the family tree.
Okay.
Puts out. Yeah.
It's Family Tree, and then when you go in there, you'll see, depending on your phone, on iPhone, it has a little more down here, and then
the light.
and then there's relatives around me. It's still okay.
Yeah,
there we go. Relatives around me.
Yeah.
And then it actually lets you search, and we'll see if anybody comes up right now. We had a whole lot of people here earlier.
Yeah.
And we were able to find several people. Like everybody found, a dozen or so people. But I don't think anybody's logged in right now. But that's how you do it.
Yeah. Well, I just did mine, and Brian Kellogg
Yep.
is my 10th cousin. Just say it. He's my cousin here.
Yeah. And then you can even click on it, and it'll show you like how you are related. Like it'll show going back to the common ancestor and everything.
On there, right?
Yep.
So I got my 10th cousin sitting next to me here. We're family. Just saying. So anyway, so that was a fun way. That's just a fun thing you could do on a date. Is just go, hey, let's just do this. Because most people are related in some ways, right? So this is something that I think is cool, and then you could bring up the topic of going to the temple, or maybe doing temple work, or doing family history, or whatever. I mean, trust me, like everybody here had so much fun. I think for an hour they were like having fun with just talking to people and connecting, and I mean, it was just awesome. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and a couple of things I like to bring up, like I'll say, I was at the temple Thursday night and blah blah blah, and it just starts that conversation, because usually they'll bring up, oh yeah, I went to the temple last week, or last time I was at the temple this happened, or whatever. And so that's a really good one. And then another one that one of the big things in the gospel as far as compatibility is Sabbath day, because there are a lot of different ways that people observe the Sabbath day. And so if you're talking and it's Sunday, hey, what did you do today? Here's what we did. We did this as a family, or what. That's an easy way. It's very low pressure. It's just and that kind of gives you an idea of what their Sabbath day observance is and how that fits with yours.
Yes, awesome. I know that, again, I do. I'm going to ditto that one. That one's great. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Being able to talk about different topics in the church with somebody is just very important. And being able to have these conversations without feeling like you're going to debate or be in conflict, that's going to be important. Because if you're in conflict, just having a conversation about it, it may not be pretty later on. So this is why, again, it's just very important. So you want to be able to have that conversation kind of flow and work through different things. So what are some other suggestions that you guys have about bringing up topics with, or working it into conversation? Hey, Kelly, if you have any suggestions, you can come on in. Okay.
Paula?
Okay, yeah.
It's Elizabeth. I was talking to someone new just a few days ago, and as a convert to the church, that's one of the things that I always ask, you know, if they are also a convert, you know, oh, tell me a conversion story. You can get a lot of information about someone that way. You find out, you know, what was it about the church that brought them in, and you know, that way it kind of leads automatically into, you know, what was it about the church that drew you in? What do you love the most? You know, what's your favorite calling been so far? All of those kind of questions. So that's been one. And that's something I'll volunteer about myself early on in a conversation, and then, you know, turn it around. And if it's, you know, if it's someone who's been a lifelong member, then, you know, that helps them open up about their, you know, their past as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's awesome. That's a great idea. Don't you think?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love
I like to invite people, whether they're members or not members, to just do stuff with me. And especially if you can bring them along. Yeah, like I'm not a young adult anymore. I'm a single adult. So bring them along to an activity, which is probably something I should do more of with people that are in my area, that I can befriend and try and make a difference in their lives. So I think the best way is just to invite people and give them the opportunity to come and do stuff with you.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so,
Paula?
yeah.
It just occurred to me too that just asking if someone uses Facebook and did you see the article about? I mean, it can be a really
Yeah.
easily accessible tool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I guess that's another, like, a very early thing. You can stalk their Facebook and no, but really, if they're sharing like quotes from President Nelson or, you know, scriptures or you know, things like that, you know, then you know that they're at least heeding what the prophet's saying.
Definitely.
You know, things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Actually, a couple weeks ago, I was at the pool in our neighborhood, and our HOA president, like we have a neighborhood Facebook group.
Yeah.
And we just were talking, and he's like, "You're LDS, aren't you?" I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I have no idea how he knows. Like, and so it must have been something I posted on Facebook. You know, so we ended up having a little conversation. Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool. So yeah, so whenever you are going out with people or just talking to people or whatever, there are great ways of being able to and interject that. So that's awesome. Elizabeth, I love that suggestion. Hey, did you see that article about, you know, because number one, you're saying something that's important to you. You like being able to read the articles, right? Just in asking that question, they're going to be able to know, oh, that's something that's important to her. That's something that she's into or that she does or whatever, right? So that's awesome.
What about what President Nelson just released, or General Conference talk? What did you think of?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's awesome.
I like this last quote. Did you remember? Take your vitamins and get your sleep. It's going to get exciting.
I know, right? It's going to get exciting. I know, right? That'll be cool. All right.
Hey,
so anyone else?
One of the things, and I really appreciate everybody's comments. One of the things I just kind of want to something to kind of be cognizant of, and I read a lot of the message boards, is that we come across as being very judgmental. And as we sit here, and it some of the questions, my concern is, what's the purpose of the questions? Are we trying to actually learn if we're compatible, if we have the same interests, or are we just trying to determine if this person's good enough for us? Because if you're absolutely interested in somebody, then the questions come from a place of, hey, I want to share something that I enjoy, and then you get to see if you can enjoy that. But if you come from a place, and I don't ask people if they have a temple recommend, and the reason being is that could be a very personal thing for somebody. You know, they may have some things that they don't want to share with me at that time, and that's why we go through the dating process. You know, I do use nonverbal clues. You know, I ask them, you know, pay attention to what they do. If they go to the temple, they'll let you know, hey, I'm going to the temple today. Or I look to see, if they're wearing their garments or not. I pay attention to that. And that kind of gives me an idea as far as, where they're at without having me to ask that question. But my only concern is because I see this a lot. We have people say we're very judgmental when we talk to each other. And so no one's perfect. No one is without sin. So I hope when we ask these questions, we're asking because we're wanting to share things that we love and enjoy, and we're not using it as a way to kind of be condescending or having kind of a superiority attitude. And I don't know what's going on with Fred's house, but I'll be there in a few minutes. So that's my only concern, that it's from a place of love. And the other thing I would say is what I found out, and I tell my kids this as far as our faith, is there's two types of people two types of people in the world: those who know LDS members and those who don't. Those who don't like us. Those who do love us because of the kind of people we are. And it's always interesting that's generally the kind of feedback that I get. I have a good friend of mine who we used to be district managers together, and we talked a lot about religion. And I've invited him to church, and he said he wasn't interested. But he made a joke with me one day. He says, I'm gonna get me a shirt that says, I heart my Mormon. Because even though we disagree, we were really close friends, and he respected my beliefs and I respected his. And so, but that came from a place of love. And so I just want to make sure we do things out of love and not just as like that job interview, and we're just saying we're really wanting to create that relationship and not be adversarial in it. So that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Making sure that our aim is to really genuinely get to know the person and get to know who they are, and not to like we said, the job application. And I also like how you said, talking about not just asking this list of questions. I think, we should be able to volunteer information and then kind of ask the converse, and that can be a good way to open things up, to give some information about ourselves before we ask things,
Definitely. I agree completely. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we definitely don't want this to be a job interview at all. And making these question suggestions tonight, this is not all in one conversation. This is going to take place over a period of, I would even say, months, or however often or long you guys are dating, because you'll be talking about different aspects of religion throughout the time that you're dating, right? It's not going to be all in one whatever. You definitely don't want to do it like a job interview, and we definitely don't want to come across judgmental. Well, I know that there are different ways that you can communicate with people to be able to not sound judgmental. And you can just say, for me, this is the way I believe, kind of thing. And you don't want to come across to somebody and tell them how they should live or what they should do or that sort of thing. You really want to avoid that kind of thing, because it just does come across very demeaning, even in some ways, or just, it doesn't make them feel good. So you want to make sure that whenever you're with somebody, especially when you're talking about religion, that you want them to feel the spirit. You want them to be able to feel good when they're around you, and no matter what topic you're talking about. So that's awesome. Thanks, Jason. Anyone else want to make a comment to that? Because I really do think that that's a great point to bring up, that we don't come across judgmental or condescending or whatever in the way that we're talking to people.
I think that's why it needs to come up just in general conversation, just a natural extension of having a conversation instead of, I have some questions for you. Because if it just comes up, like back to the temple, if you just say, hey, I went to the temple on Saturday, and that will just be an opening for them, or talk about your calling or the lesson. I taught a lesson on Sunday and this is what I taught. If they reciprocate, you're not asking them a question. You're not saying, well, what do you think of the lesson on Sunday? But it's a way of just opening that door without interrogating them or being judgmental.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think talking about things that you're studying and Come Follow Me is a great way to do that, because you're like, hey, I have a kind of a question about this one thing. What was your thought on that?
Yeah.
And if they have no idea, you've got your answer.
Right.
You've never even really asked them an evasive question. You're just like, so, hey, I've been studying, this and Come Follow Me. What were your thoughts on this one thing? Because I'm really struggling with it. Because that's you being very vulnerable as well.
That's awesome. Jason, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I get to one. I'll be quiet. So somebody on the message board said they went to the Hill Cumorah pageant and they really, really enjoy it. I've got a little confession. I've never been, but I grew up in the church and I would hear about the Hill Cumorah pageant. For the longest time, I thought it was a bathing suit contest, because that's what a pageant was. Because nobody ever explained to me what the Hill Cumorah pageant was. So I was always up for. So I went on my mission, and somebody told me what it was. For years I was wondering, why is everybody going up to New York to watch a bathing suit contest? It always just really bugged me, but I never asked. Somebody weeks and weeks ago, they talked about how can the Book of Mormon help us with dating, and what can, and I love the Book of Mormon, and I find a lot of my answers come from the Book of Mormon. And I thought about it and took weeks before I came up with an answer. And this is just something I've come to as we talk about dating in the gospel. In 2 Nephi, I think it's Lehi's talking. He's getting ready to die, and he's giving his children their life lesson. And he says, we have to know the bad in order to enjoy the good. And so as we talk about dating, I realize that I'm gonna have some horrible experiences, and whoever I date is gonna have some horrible experiences. But when we find that one person, how much more are we going to be excited because we have had those experiences, and that we've had the bad experiences, and that when we have the good ones, it means more to us. So that's just one of the things when we talk about religion. I love the Book of Mormon, and I'm always trying to find ways to help me in my life. And that's one of the things I realized with dating, how the Book of Mormon can help me appreciate the dating process a little bit better, instead of being like, oh man, this really stinks. I'm still not married after 5 years. When that moment happens, really, really going to be happy because I know what it's like to not be in that world.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much. That's so right. And just so you know, I've also been a member for quite a number of years. My parents joined when I was a kid, and I've never been to one of the pageants either. So you're not the only one.
Yeah, me either.
But it's okay. Well,
That's good.
It's not cousin. All right. So, so yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, and I know that they're ending this year, and I think it's awesome that people get to go watch that, but not everybody does. But yeah.
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
Or ask something or clarify. So when we find out that someone didn't read last week's Come Follow Me, what are we allowing that to say to us? Are we making a judgment that, oh, they're not doing their studies, and so they're not where they need to be, or what we don't know what happened in their life. We don't know if they forgot. We don't know if they had a family emergency. Like, what are we trying to really find out? Like, what's I guess a lot of what Jason was saying, what's the intent behind what we want to know? Is that a defined factor for someone what if they do have a temple recommend but they can't use it right now? What if they haven't gotten their endowments yet? Not that they're not good enough or not worthy, that they're just scared. What are we using? How are we using those as judgments to help us find a good match for us?
Paula, can I answer that one? Since
Yes.
I kind of started it.
Yep.
I think that what we're trying to do is start the conversation. We're not trying to be judgmental in any of this. We're starting a conversation to find out if there is connection or compatibility with that person, because we want to make sure that the levels that we have, the things that are important in our lives, are going to be met by that person that we are currently interested in. So if your standard is, and I don't necessarily agree with this standard. Matter of fact, I don't agree with this standard that you won't date somebody that if they skip a week of Come Follow Me, that they're just now off the table. I think that's ridiculous.
Amen.
Right. That's my personal opinion. I'm not doubting. I'm not angry with anybody that feels that way. but I'm just saying that's a conversation starter. You know, I've traveled this weekend and I've not done mine yet. And if somebody asked me, I'd have to be like, I'm sorry, I haven't done it yet, but whatever. But it's a conversation starter that just says, hey, I'm being vulnerable with you and saying, this is something that I'm struggling with right now in my Come Follow Me study this week. Can you help me with this? And that tells you a lot about them. You're not necessarily asking them, do you study Come Follow Me every week? You're learning that in the process, but you're finding out, can this person partner with me when I have a question about the gospel? Can they be there to answer me? Can they, you know, are they willing to talk to me about these things that are dear to them? To me, that's why that question is important. It has nothing to do with how often, you know, if they studied or not, or whatever. I'm learning more than just the question. I think that all of the questions we've talked about tonight give us multi-layered answers. And I'll be quiet now because I've talked a lot.
Oh, no. You're good, Jennifer. I love your comments. Keep them coming. All right. So yeah, I completely agree. We are just, and some of this, like the, did you read the article about, could just be a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could be dating for 3 months and all of a sudden we're just going to have this conversation. Or, hey, I read this article. I thought it was awesome. You know.
Paula, you gave me permission to talk, so now I'm going to take you up on it. Hopefully, if we're lucky enough to find somebody that we're compatible with, we're asking these questions even after we're married.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I love it, Jennifer. Thank you. Oh, yes, definitely. But yeah, but in the beginning, there is some compatibility, right? There is, and we do want to find out if we're compatible. And Jason, we do want to avoid coming off, or Heidi, any of you, we want to avoid coming off judgmental, right? Just like you said, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So tonight the conversation is, how do we bring these topics up without seeming judgmental or condescending or demeaning or, you know, looking down on somebody as if, you know, they're not doing what you think they should do. Does that make sense? So a lot of the ways, and I love the suggestions so far, you know, the ones of just, hey, I went to the temple last week and here's an experience that I had. I think it was awesome. And you just kind of have a conversation about it versus, you know, do you go to the temple? Do you have a temple recommend kind of thing, right? But you could start off with something like Brian suggested here and then work in, you know, I just love going to the temple. You know, how often do you get to go to the temple? For some people, like I know Pat's on our call, he has to drive 4 hours to get to the temple. You know, he's not going to get to go every week.
Yeah.
I live 15, 20 minutes from the temple. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's just, there's logistics there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as easy for some people to get there as there is for others.
Yeah,
so
when I was living in Jacksonville, where Jason's at, you know, the temple's 2.5 hours, and it's on the wrong side of Orlando. You got to drive through a whole bunch of traffic to get there, and so I only got to the temple every maybe 4 or 5 months, you know, because it's a pretty big commitment. But now in Atlanta, I work 25 to 35 minutes depending on traffic, so I can go after work, and so I go probably once a month at least to the temple. But, you know, it's not that my commitment has changed. It's the logistics of it.
Right. Because I think testimony matters way more than, you know, whatever, you know, than the logistics, you know. So just keep that in mind.
Hey, Paula.
Yeah.
So when we ask questions, that's why I love the question, how long have you been a member of the church?
Yes.
Because when you ask that question, they answer all those things really right there, because they'll say, well, you know, I haven't been active for 20 years. You know, I just started coming back. Well, what helped me? You know, what changed? What happened that you wanted to come back? And so with that one question, the other question I like to ask is, how long has your family been in the church? You know, how far back do you go? Because my relatives in the South, we were trying to chase them all out. You know, so I don't go very far, but yeah, Orlando is when you hit I-4, it's either a hit or miss. It's either you're going to be in Orlando in a few hours, or good luck, we'll see you next week. So it is tough, and I don't go as often as I would like, you know. But that's why I also try to ask if about lessons or something, you know. Hey, I was reading this, and how do you feel about it? Or, you know, have you had a chance to read this? You know, instead of, you know, giving them the opportunity to, you're not, you know, did you read this? You know, like they're your child, but hey, have you had a chance to read this? Because I really, really liked it. You know, this is what I found interesting about it. And that allows you share with them. And then if they want to respond, and generally people do, they're going to respond with what they liked or what they important. They say, hey, you know, I haven't had a chance to read it, but I really like what you're saying. You know, one of the things that we've talked about, or I've talked about with women in the church. In fact, I talked to my daughter. I picked my daughter up Friday from girls' camp, and she said that our church is very patriarchal. And I said, well, technically it is. And I said, you know, we've got 5 organizations. We have the priesthood, we have Relief Society, Young Women's, Young Men's, and then we have primary. I said, of those 5 organizations, 3 of them are ran by women. So 60% of our church is directly influenced by women. So to dovetail that, because it's really important that women understand that they run the church. We're just here for, you know, to do what they say. But I invite. My job is to set the example, you know, and to invite. And so when I talk to somebody, if I'm interested, I think it was Pat says, you know, you invite people. You know, you don't make them feel guilty. And when you send that invitation, it's like, and I talked to somebody, she said it perfectly. She said, hey, are you busy tomorrow? If not, you know, I would love for you to go to church with me, you know, and you put that invitation out there. That's what the Savior did. The Savior said, come unto me. He didn't say, if you don't come unto me, you know, there's going to be fire and brimstone. You know, there's love, 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 and set the example. So, but that's what dating, you know, set the example, set the bar. The other thing, and I will shut up after this, when we live our principles, we give other people hope that they can do it too. I think it was Jennifer who said that because she lived her principles, her friend joined the church because he gave her hope. She gave him hope that he could live that lifestyle too. But if she had not lived those principles, then she would have taken that hope away from him. Even though they may not appreciate what we have, they honor it, they respect it, they love it, and we give them hope that they can be like that one day too. So,
love it.
Hey, for those who didn't invite Jennifer, Pat, awesome job. If I was there, I'd give you a pat on the back. Awesome job. Way to set the example.
What was that? I didn't hear that last part.
I said, way to set the example. Show
Oh,
us,
yeah.
show us how it's done. Because, you know, practice what you preach.
Yep. Live your religion. That's awesome. Thank you. Hey, Julie in the back. We have actually a few other women here around the table. You just can't really see them, but we've got Kelly, Melanie, and Mary here joining us as well. Eating.
I'm trying to be quiet.
So we've got like a table full. So I think one of the best things about communication that really helps a lot is that we do our best to avoid yes or no answers. So don't ask questions that will be like, do you go to church? Do you have a temple commit? You know, do you pray? Do you read your scriptures? You know what I mean? Like, we don't want all those because those are like the job interview type questions. Like, and it can come across very, well, let's see if you're doing all this right? We don't.
Tell me about a time when.
Tell me about is the best way to start a conversation.
Yep, there you go. You can talk about, you know, one of ask them, tell me about a time when you feel like you've received an answer to a prayer. You know, that could be cool. Now that would be close. That would be further into your relationship. That's not a first date question.
That's not a friend.
Remember, first date question, we're keeping it on the forward, the family, occupation, recreation, and dreams, right? But as you get into it and you get to know them a little bit more, and we're bringing up more topics of religion, we work them in. We're not, you know, rarely do we spend a whole date talking about religion, but you do want to work that into conversations. So my recommendation is to take some of the advice that's been given here tonight by Todd, Brian, Jason, Jennifer, Sylvia, all these people that have just been given fabulous advice tonight of talking about something that you've experienced, and then bring up that conversation. And then also you can talk to them about something that's important to you that's been on your mind. And it might be family history, or it could be, you've been praying about something or whatever, right? And as you feel closer to somebody, you can be a little bit more vulnerable with them to share more of these experiences. But you do want to avoid the, well, you don't need to live like that, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that, or that sort of thing, right? Like, we want to make sure that we are speaking from our experience and that we're allowing them to have their own. And a lot of it is compatibility, but it is not to be communicated in a way of being good enough. It's just being compatible. Like Brian brought up I think they brought up the subject of the caffeinated sodas. Like if one person does and another person doesn't, as long as you guys are okay with each other, keep going, make it happen. It's not a thing of, oh, I don't, so you shouldn't kind of thing, right? But then there are other things that may be more important to you, like the temple attendance, like we talked about earlier, or the testimony of the temple, or the testimony of the sacrament, or the power of prayer, or fasting, there's so many different topics we could bring in, the word of wisdom, or going to church, there's just so many different topics. So what I'm going to recommend that you do is make a list of those topics, and then write down, like maybe journal, what it is that's important to you about that topic, and what is important to you about the person that you date or eventually marry with that topic. Is it something that's a deal breaker for you? Is it something that you feel like you can compromise? Just whatever, whether it be Sabbath day or the word of wisdom, or whatever, right? So, because there are some different topics that can come up that you may or may not see eye to eye on, kind of thing. Okay, so you guys have any other thoughts you want to share?
I have a question for all of y'all there at the conference. Inquiring minds want to know. So you just spent a weekend with a bunch of singles. Did you get any numbers?
That's not what it's about, Jason.
Yeah, not what it's about, but perhaps. But somebody mentioned we all looked really relaxed. It's because we spent a weekend on the lake, and we have a view of the lake right here. This cabin, and Fred's got a different cabin, and I think he's got a nice view there too. So we have had a really good weekend, both recreation and spiritually, and just as a whole.
So is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay, Mary's back there. I hope you heard her.
Some of us did. Yeah.
Yes, some of us did. Yeah.
All right.
Definitely. One of my really good friends met a guy and they hit it off right away.
Yeah, there's several couples that
this weekend there were several. I think there were
quickly.
at least 3 of my close friends that are not hooked up. That sounds bad. I'm a convert.
Yes,
I don't mean hooked
Connected.
up.
Too bad we can't
I'm
edit
so
these,
sorry.
right?
I'm so sorry.
Got together.
That's not the word I meant to use.
They realized they were compatible
Yes.
and decided to pursue a relationship in a healthy way.
Thank you. There you go. There's the right way to say that. What's your question?
Talking about compatibility, you're asking, you're talking about temple attendance, and let's say you don't want to try to change the person, you want them to be who they are, and you're looking at temple attendance, and maybe you would like to attend the temple more than they would, and so is it okay to think, well, maybe once, maybe I can get him to go more, or is that an okay change to look for? No, that's
it's something that you can discuss and try to come to a compromise.
You have to be okay with it not happening.
It would be better to ask them, what is your goal? What is your temple attendance goal?
Okay.
And then whatever their goal is, accept that.
If they're not doing it for
Because,
you, it's really
yeah,
just for you.
having a relationship where you go into and think, oh, well, maybe I can change that later.
Yeah.
That's not a great.
Yeah.
It's best to just invite.
Mhm.
Yeah,
have them come.
and just ask them what their goal is.
Mhm.
If you live 30 minutes from the temple, what would be your temple attendance goal? If you lived an hour from the temple, what would be your temple attendance goal? And that would be further along conversation. I mean, in the dating relationship, right? Like, you're not going to do that again. First month would not be a good time to ask that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you figure out what is okay for the both. You know, if you want to go once a month and they want to go once every 2 months, you know, do you make it once every 6 weeks, or do you go together 1 month and then you go by yourself on the other month? And is that okay with you? You know, like,
Right.
but expecting someone to change is, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why I like talking about these, because these are the 5 topics we're going to be talking about in the next month or so are the ones that most relationships divorce over. Yeah. So this is why I say that it's really good to talk about these beforehand and come to a compatibility thing, never with the attitude of, well, I'll change that after. No. Because no, we are grown people,
And
right?
especially
We have
at
our
our
own
age,
thoughts and opinions.
it's-
Yeah, I know, right?
It's pretty ingrained.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying people can't change, but
Right. But they've got to want it for themselves.
Mhm.
They've got to want it for themselves. Not because if we come across like we're going to change somebody else, and we come across more as a parent than we do a spouse. And I don't watch Dr. Phil a lot. I know Matthew likes it sometimes, but I don't watch it a lot. But there's one thing that he has said that has stuck with me. And that is that what do kids do when they grow up? They move out. So if you're parenting the person you're married to, eventually they will leave you. So you want to make sure that you are on terms with the person that you're married to in a way where you talk about this and you reach a compromise, and it is something that you're okay with and that you're really okay with. Not, I guess I could settle for that. That's different. Okay? You've got to be truly accepting whatever that is. Like if look, again, we can go back to the sodas because that's an easy one, I think. Hopefully, no controversy here. But like for instance, I don't drink caffeinated sodas. I don't drink soda at all. But I have dated, actually, I think most of the men I have dated drink soda or drink caffeinated sodas. I don't have an issue with that as much as I do with other things. You know, I mean, if that's the worst thing, then that's the worst thing, right? Not that I like sodas. I prefer somebody that didn't, but it's not like I'm going to be on them going, oh, you know? I know, right? So that would be just a lot different. So that's a different type of thing, right? So.
Hey Paula.
Yeah.
The one thing I've learned when I talk to people is people who are divorced. I've heard this a lot, where they said, you know, when I started dating somebody, they changed for that period of dating, got married, and they went back to the way they were before the other person entered into their life.
Yeah.
And so I've heard that a lot. I thought they would change. So that's
no, right.
History is a good indicator of the future. The other thing is Larissa asked a question. She wanted to know about the conference.
Yep. So I love that because I was going to be bringing that up after you were finished. Yes. So the Atlanta conference coming up in August is August 8th through 11th. It's going to be at Lake Lanier. And there are a couple of different Facebook groups where we are announcing it. You have the event there and it has the registration link and everything. One of them is the Southeast USA Single Adult Conferences. And then the other one is Latter-day Saints Georgia Single Adults 30, and then the plus sign. Okay, so just join one or both of those Facebook groups, and you'll be able to get information about that conference. There are other conferences coming up as well.
This is the, wait for it to focus, the cover photo and the title.
I'm going to pull it back just a little bit more.
Come on,
There you go.
there we go. Okay. that is the cover photo and the title of the Latter-day Saints Georgia single adults.
30 plus.
30 plus, yes.
Yep.
So if you join that group, it's got all the information on the upcoming conference in Atlanta. There's also one upcoming in Raleigh, one in Nashville, and then the one that we were at this week is called Rock the Dock, and that's an annual event. So you'll have to wait till next year for that one.
Okay. The other group, Todd pulled up on his phone, and it's Southeast USA Single Adult Conferences. Oh, we do have 31 plus in there. Sorry, I forgot that one. Anyway, little sunset going on there. All right. So yeah, definitely just log into those Facebook groups we have in the events tab. We'll have that. You'll see Julie sometimes. She's our marketing person, and she's also taking care of our food committee. Say hi, Julie. Julie's like my biggest fan. she makes sure she all of these webinars. Anyway, so but back to our topic though. When it comes to communication, we do want to make sure that we are on the same page, compatible, or accepting of whatever the other person is. Now, that doesn't mean that you really, really, really want to work out, so you're going to accept anything and everything that they do. That's not healthy, okay? There still needs to be boundaries. There still needs to be what you will and won't do. That's why I'm asking you, or challenging you, if you will, and, you know, whether you do it or not, this isn't homework you turn in. This is just for you to make those lists of the religious aspects and what's important to you, and journal that and put some thought into it. And because not everybody thinks about that, but these topics must be talked about beforehand, or there could be issues after you get married. So just so you know on that one. Anyone else have any other thoughts? Anything else you want to bring up? Okay. So just a little rundown. We want to avoid yes and no questions, or yes, no questions that require that. Want to avoid that. We want to more share experiences, thoughts, and feelings for our own, and then work that into a conversation. Okay. How do you feel about is an awesome way of asking. I love that Jennifer brings that up. That's an awesome way of asking somebody, how do you feel about? Because all you're doing is asking for thoughts. Yeah. You're asking for whatever. Instead of, do you have a testimony up? It's more, what are your thoughts about this? You know, you learn something from people. And then you do want to avoid being confrontational and judgmental or demeaning. And you do want to know beforehand what your standards are. Because whenever you go about a relationship and you're like, I'll figure it out and I'll see what they're feeling and then I'll just kind of mold with theirs, then you don't really know where you stand. You're like the wise man, the foolish man is what I think of every time I think of that. You know, the wise man built his house upon a rock, and the foolish man on the sand is going to wash away. Well, let's be wise, and let's know what our firm foundation is. What is it that you want to build this relationship on? So when you establish that relationship with the Lord, and you know what your standards are, and you know what you're about and what you're looking for, and again, doesn't have to be written in stone kind of thing. You can even write on your list what you're willing to compromise here and what you're willing to, to adjust to or whatever. That's important. Any other thoughts?
One last homework assignment. We talked about it at the beginning of the call. Humble and Kind by Tim McGraw. Look it up. I'm sure it's on YouTube. Really, actually, yes, it is on YouTube, and the video is really powerful. Yeah. The video is really, really good. Look that up.
I don't. I think you guys have covered all the points really well.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, any of you ladies have any other thoughts you want to add in? Okay.
Come to Lake Lanier, Atlanta conference.
Yeah.
Or Raleigh conference, or Nashville, or anything you can make.
There you go.
Come join
Paula.
us.
Yeah. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I hope that this was helpful. And next week I want to talk. We're going to talk a little bit next week about emotional connections as well, and emotional vampires. And then we're also going to talk about a couple of our other topics as well, okay? As we go throughout the next month. So next week we're going to talk about, because I feel like with religion we have to make kind of a connection with people. So we want to make sure that we address that before we move on to the other topics, okay? All right. Any other questions? You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you sharing your Sunday evening with me. It really means a lot. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh,